Hello and welcome to a brand new painting video. In this video I'll be painting one of my favorite Blood Bowl models, the Troll. I've only used it once in a match and it basically just stood there doing not much of anything, but at least it's a cool model. Let's begin, shall we? I'll start with the biggest area of the model, which is the skin. I choose to paint the troll skin in a blue tint. For the base coat I use a mix of Sotek Green and Temple Guard Blue. To create some depth, I'll wash the skin with Drakenhof Nightshade. Now I want to build up the raised areas with some Temple Guard Blue. Unfortunately, I'm missing footage of this step, so here's a complimentary picture of my Goblin Blood Bowl team, the Bad Moon Streakers. This step was about creating a new layer with a mix of Temple Guard Blue and Wraithbone. Lastly, I will highlight the skin with some Wraithbone. I will add an extra step on the soft parts of the skin like the stomach, lips and nose. The troll has some rocks growing on his back. These I will paint with Leviadon Blue. Now I will dry brush them with Temple Guard Blue. The softer parts of the skin I want to paint in a lighter color. I paint these parts with Nihilakh Oxide. The paint is already very wet, so it blends very nicely with the paint job I already have. Lastly, I want to paint the bags under the eyes with Druchii Violet. The basis of the figure is now complete, but we're not there yet by a long shot. Let's move on to the next section. I choose to go with brown leather instead of black, as it will fit my Goblin team better. For the base coat I use Mournfang Brown. Now I will wash the leather with Agrax Earthshade. I will create one highlight with Jokaero Orange. If you want a more subdued highlight, you can also use Skarsnik Brown. The ropes holding the wooden sign are base coated in Tallarn Sand and given a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Much of what I'm painting here, I'm painting with classic methods. I do this so the troll won't look out of place in the Goblin team. Alternatively, you can paint the leather with contrast paints to achieve a quicker result. The troll has lots of bones, skulls, spikes and nails everywhere. I base coat everything with Skeleton Horde. Next, I will wash everything with some watered down Agrax Earthshade to get a bit more of a weathered look. After filming this part, I actually went back and highlighted all the bone sections with some Ushabti Bone. This made them pop even more. And this is the old tried and tested method of painting metal. Of course, I'll base coat with Leadbelcher. I'll add a wash of Nuln Oil and add a highlight of Ironbreaker. I actually prefer the contrast paint Basilicanum Grey for the metal parts nowadays, but this is to keep the model in line with my existing Blood Bowl team. The wooden board can be base coated with Wyldwood for a quick but good looking paint scheme. Give the wood a light dry brush of Baneblade Brown to add some more highlights. Now I will use Abaddon Black to freehand the number. In this case it'll be 13. I can only imagine how hard it must be for those goblins to make sure their troll has the correct sporting gear on for the match. Having a wooden board with its number on it must have been a last-minute effort for sure. I base coat the black armor and cloth with Stormvermin Fur. Next, I will give it a wash with Nuln Oil. I can definitely recommend giving this 2 or maybe 3 passes. Now I will highlight this with Administratum Grey. I was never really a fan of full black armor. I tend to go for a very dark grey just to make it more interesting. Also, this is easier to highlight in my opinion. To give the yellow a good starting point, I will base coat all the parts with Ushabti Bone. This paint covers any area really well. Now I will base coat the same parts with Yriel Yellow. You might need 2 thin layers to get an even coat. Either give everything a wash of Reikland Fleshshade or carefully go around all the edges if you don't want to spoil your even coat. I usually cover the whole area, as a wash can sometimes reveal interesting areas you might not have picked up otherwise. Make a new layer with Yriel Yellow. You'll probably need 2 thin coats again. Finally, highlight the armor with Ushabti Bone. To paint yellow armor, there is a much quicker way now with contrast paints. But painting with classic paints can give a model more depth and is a great way to teach yourself layering. The eyes of the troll and goblin are base coated with Mephiston Red. Next I will give a highlight of Wild Rider Red. And finally I will give it a reflection dot with White Scar. On to the goblin skin. First, I base coat this with Deathworld Forest. I did this with 2 thin coats. Next, I washed the skin with Biel-Tan Green. I layer Elysian Green to brighten up the skin a bit more. Now I highlight the skin with Skarsnik Green. I was going to use Nurgling Green, which is a slightly different shade of green, but the pot didn't close properly and the paint hardened. Whoops. Now I will paint the nose, lips and inside of the ear with a watered down Kislev Flesh. These parts are now washed with Reikland Fleshshade. Again, this is an old method on how I used to paint goblin skin. I actually prefer the skin I painted on the Orc Boy, which is much more vibrant. Now to create a base that looks like a Blood Bowl field. First base coat the entire base with Mournfang Brown. Make sure the rim has an even coat. Now I will put on a layer of wood glue on the base. I like to use this sculpting tool, but you can also use a toothpick or an old brush. Next, I will place static grass on the base. Just step to release all the excess grass. Now I use the sculpting tool to push up the grass and remove it from the rim. Lastly, I will use Wraithbone to paint a random line on the grass to simulate the troll standing somewhere on the playing field. And here we have an awesome looking Bloodbowl Troll, ready to throw that poor goblin into the end zone, or probably a member of the other team. I do love painting these bigger models, which has lots of little small details. The pink helmet on his knee is a little nod to a team of a friend of mine. This tutorial was a mixture of some old painting techniques and new ones just to make sure the troll looks good with his goblin team. Hopefully this troll will actually be useful in the future on the field now that it has a paint job. Thanks for watching, and don't let the referee catch you doing anything sneaky, you hear?